Podcast, the showing up and finishing edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and as always, I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, gentleman, and a scholar, and somebody who is not happy, like me, about what took place this week in the world of the NFL. His name is Joshua Fine. What's going on, man?
Doing great, man. Not happy about it, of course. Pretty despondent, I think. But yeah, such is life, I guess, these days. But hey, at least in NASCAR, people showed up and they finished. Like Kyle Larson showed up and finished. Dale Jr. showed up and was able to finish the race. So a lot happened there. Lando Norris actually showed up and finished. So a lot happening there in the world of motorsports. Maybe not so much in the NFL.
Yeah, and in NASCAR, we had Larson destroy the field in the Bristol night race. Martin Truex Jr.'s last season almost was ended before the playoffs, but now is definitely over. Running out the string to try and get one more win in his career. Keebler Gibbs gets knocked out of the playoffs along with Brad Keselowski and Harrison Burton, which isn't surprising. But there was definitely a lot of talking points, not just the short track package, the fact that Goodyear did not bring back the same tire as much as they want to act like they did. NASCAR's inability to see, what needs to be done with the car in terms of the short tracks and road courses. Without having total chaos take place. In the Xfinity Series, Cold Custard goes out after he led the points for a good amount of the year and then had some issues there, I think, in July and August, which opened the door for Justin Allgaier. Allgaier then held the lead for, the last month or two, and somehow or another gave it up. That Bristol had issues, and Cole Custer now is a regular season champion in the Xfinity Series. Of course, he's going to go back to the Cup Series next year. Can he win 2 championships in a row, heading back to the Cup Series like Martin Truex Jr., like Richard, and others in Tyler Reddick, amongst others. In Xfinity, we'll preview the playoff for the Xfinity Series. The Truck Series will be back this coming weekend with their first round cutoff. Layne Riggs went out and won another race, so 2 in a row for him. Best driver in the series at the moment, I think, over the last 6 races. Figured it out, and it's a good thing that he didn't make it, because I think the playoffs would have a way different feel if Layne Riggs was in them. It's a problem for next year, I think, for everybody, but for this year, it's just him racking up wins, which he's very capable of doing, and he's starting to figure it out with his Front Row Motorsports team. We'll talk about that as well. The Formula One race, Lando Norris actually led the first lap of a Formula One race. From pole, and basically ran away with the deal. Fish Lips and Oscar Piastri made up the podium. Ferrari messed up their whole entire weekend basically in qualifying, and Mercedes was nowhere. The other main talking point was the fact that Red Bull colluded per usual with their second team. Now they're going to go and sell it as, it's Daniel Ricciardo's last race. You wanted him to have one last hurrah. He was running dead last, so he goes and gets the fastest lap, which took away the Grand Slam from Lando, took away a point. That in turn basically meant that if Fish Lips finishes second to Lando every race the rest of the year, he'd still win the world championship. Even if he maxed out points, meaning if he were to win the race and get the fastest lap in every single race. So there's that. We'll talk about Daniel Ricciardo's Formula One career because it's most likely over since there's a 3-week break between Singapore and the U.S. Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas. And they need to either go and put Liam Lawson in a car or they have to let him go. And One-Eyed Marco is looks like he's decided to take the first option. We'll talk about NFL Week 3. The Niners blow yet another lead in a game. This time, though, against the Rams in their house, meaning the Niners fans, the faithful, were probably 2/3, if not 75% of the crowd, and they allowed the LA Rams to just go off on them in every aspect. We'll talk about that, everything that went on there in that game. The Jags on Monday Night Football on national TV got anally annihilated by the Buffalo Bills. They got put through tables. It was like a TLC match. And like Ric Flair doing a run-in on Trevor Lawrence, basically all in one. I was watching that game and I'm watching the wheels falling off, and then I'm just thinking, I wonder what Josh thinks. So we will find out what Josh thinks here in a little bit in terms of that. We'll also talk about fantasy teams, and we'll move forward into the roundup, which will talk about NHRA, MotoGP, Moto2, and World Superbikes. They'll all be racing this weekend as well. IMSA ran the 6 hours at Indy, battle at the Brickyard or whatever you call it. The Sandown 500 for the supercars, F1 Academy at Singapore, and Rally Chile for the WRC. We'll preview the tripleheader at Kansas. Josh will let us know what things are going on in iRacing and gaming in a sim segment, and we'll call it a day. In terms of the Cup Series, Bristol night race, the best national anthem there is the whole entire year, with all the kids doing it from the MRO, so that was great. Of course, Johnny Morris had to mess it up with wishing Richard Childress happy birthday, but that's fine. They're butt buddies, so whatever. But they're hunters and they're fishermen, so they're really tough. They're real man. Like, yeah, sure. That's great. And then Richard Childress, of course, made a chick that decided to marry Mike Dillon too. So either just getting back to the point of the race itself, the race was basically over after the first, I think, 35 laps of the race. After lap 32, when pole sitter Alex Bowman lost the lead to teammate Kyle Larson. From that point on, I think, Kyle Larson led 462 of the 462 of the remaining, I think, 467 laps or something in it is, because there's one lap there, 2, 5, He led all but 5 laps in the last 467 laps of a 500-lap race at Bristol. So, absolute demolition. Got to celebrate with his son Owen, do a whole bit there. That was a Kyle Larson masterclass. That's all you can really say. There was racing, some racing behind. I think the race itself, if you were at the track, presented way better than what the actual race was on TV. It's kind of like when I went to the Bristol night race and Kyle Busch beat Eric Jones. It was a much better race in person than it was on TV. So there's that. Kyle Larson over William Clyde Elliott II. Darrell Walsh Jr. gets a third place finish. Dennis Hamlin, Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Ryan Preece with a top 10 finish. Chase Briscoe finishes 8th. Alex Bowman started on pole, but he finished 9th. And Ross Chastain was the last car on the lead lap. So there was only 10 cars on the lead lap. There were only 3 cautions for incidents, and none after lap 330 or 337. They ran the last 166 laps under green there. So that also helped Kyle Larson's case because they didn't have to pit. You had 7 playoff drivers in the top 9. And then 8 playoff drivers in the top 13, counting Gumby Cindric. Keebler Gibbs was 15th, Byron 17th, Reddick 20th. Martin Truex got a speeding penalty. He was up front for a good amount of the night, early part of the night, was in position possibly to give Kyle Larson a run maybe, and then got caught speeding on pit road. I think Gumby also got caught for speeding, but I might be remembering that wrong. But both those Gibbs guys are out. Suarez needed a miracle and somehow or another pulled it off after finishing 31st, having no speed the whole entire weekend. His first 2 races in this playoff round saved him for sure there. And go through Brad Keselowski 26th, Logano 28th, but he had already won. Suarez 31st, as I mentioned, and Harrison Burton had electrical problems, I believe. Electrical / engine issues that rendered his playoff over in 35th. So, I mean, Larson goes out there, opens a can of whoop ass on everybody. It's not the first time, it won't be the last. Goodyear's insistence that they brought the same tire was total bullshit. And I don't like the fact that Goodyear and NASCAR feel it's okay to lie to the fan base. Just admit that you brought a rock hard tire that isn't going to fall off because you don't want to have the kind of the demo derby or whatever it was in the spring. Or better yet, bring an option like you had at Richmond and at least put it in the team's hands. Maybe make there be a little bit more versatility. There might be a little bit more going on. But whatever they brought did not work. And frankly, it's never going to work because NASCAR's insistence on like this spec car without opening up certain areas, whether it's giving more horsepower, whether it's removing the diffuser or putting downforce in other areas, whatever it may be, as long as we're going to keep this platform, the short tracks and road courses as we know it are going to stink. Watkins Glen, of course, is Watkins Glen. It's one of the greatest tracks on earth, but you need to have nonsense happen to have the kind of finish like they had a couple weeks ago. Otherwise, you're going to have usually butt whoopings there as well. So, and then that's just 2 examples. So, I don't know, Josh. I was indifferent. I mean, how many times now we've gotten used to Larson do this. He can do it in a sprint car. He can do it in a cup car. He can do it in an Xfinity or a truck or whatever, a radio flyer. But I think my greater takeaway is what that whole like not really being honest about things. I think that's what pisses me off about this race more than anything. I'm glad Briscoe made it, of course, but he ran well this whole entire round, or 2 out of 3 races. So he had put himself in position to make it. And unfortunately for the guy he's taking over for, he wasn't as lucky, but it was a self-inflicted wound, which, to be fair, the way this whole season has been, it either has been MTJ making mistakes, James Small making bad pit calls, the pit crew not doing a good job, mechanical problems. It's just been a bad year, you know. A bad year for Martin Truex is a great year for most people, but he's a champion in this series. He's from the time that Cole Pearn became the crew chief, he became a Hall of Famer. It doesn't matter, he's a Hall of Fame driver, that ain't gonna change. But what we saw this year of MTJ wasn't the same guy that we have seen in his peak. And so it's an unfortunate end for him, Josh, but take it away in terms of however you want to go and look at this race on Saturday night.
Well, I have to agree with what Kyle Larson said in Twitter. If you saw what he said today, basically at the end he said, "Temper your expectations. We're driving spec race cars," and I think that's a 100% spot on, because that's what this is. Spec racing. Everybody has all the same parts for the most part, and there isn't really much that they can do besides put them together and go race. And I guess the only difference is what they do in between putting them together and going out onto the track, and that's what this is. So when you have everybody race the same type of tire, the same type of setup, the same type of body and all that stuff, it's just what we're gonna get. And I mean, Bristol, it's not really been a place where we see a lot of fall off anyways, because if you remember a couple of years ago, was there a race where I think Noah Gragson had like 90 lap old tires or something and won the Xfinity race with, and he was able to do that on that type of tire strategy. And we haven't really seen too much variation other than that Bristol spring race where we had guys blowing tires about every 25 laps. So outside of that, I haven't seen a whole lot of tire stuff. And I mean, to be fair, I mean, there really shouldn't be a lot of tire problems like what we saw in the spring, but it made it interesting. And I guess that's got to be a anomaly, because whatever they had, it just had to have been the right conditions for what happened in the spring to only happen one time, and then the rest of it where they tried to use that tire and until now kind of not be anything interesting. And it doesn't help that Kyle Larson and the 5 team figured something out and they went and spanked the field, which I mean, it was not really an exciting race, but at least at the end, it ended the streak of green-white checkers that we've seen so far, in this sport, in this playoffs to start, because we had a streak of races, about 5 to I think 6 races where a green-white checkered had happened, and kind of the way that it had happened had kind of dampened the finish to the race, and made it, at least the way that they were racing, made it seem like a amateur hour and all that. And at least with Larson dominating, he was the guy that performed the best throughout the race, actually won the race. So we can at least take away that for once. And then it was also interesting seeing to add on to the tire stuff and all that. Like, they were focusing on Daniel Suarez, who was like in 30th place, and then I guess that wasn't good enough for Ty Gibbs to overcome and make it in on points, even though he was on the lead lap, I think, for the most part throughout that race. So, Ty Gibbs was having a hard time getting around guys and couldn't pass, but Daniel Suarez was able to use the high line and defend and keep his spot as a lapped car and somehow transfer his way in because he had enough points from the first 2 races. So that's interesting to kind of watch. And there's definitely even times where Larson trying to lap people couldn't lap them because he couldn't get around on the bottom. So this was from that perspective, not a lot happened, and definitely more of a. I mean, if anything, it was probably more of a strategy race, but hard to have any type of strategy, even when the team like the 5 dominates like that, and they're probably a favorite now to win the championship because I think the last time Kyle Larson led this many laps at Bristol in a race, he ended up winning the title. So that was in 2021. So I think that's a strong case there that could happen once again. So, which would be fitting in the year that he attempted the Indy 500 and then couldn't get back to Charlotte and had the whole waiver debacle and everything, which that'd be the first time in probably ever that we had a modern era champion not attempt all the races but still win the title. So that would be an interesting footnote. But there was hardly any passing. It was a struggle. I mean, there was probably some battles, but definitely not on anything that we could see. And I think maybe the only guy that was able to do any passing was probably Bubba Wallace and Denny Hamlin, because Bubba got his first top 5 finish in a while and coming off the contract extension, and Denny Hamlin needed to make his way into the playoffs and for round 12, and Hamlin pointed his way in. So good job for them, I guess, and they avoid the disaster of failing out of the round of 16. Instead, his both of his teammates and Truex and Gibbs end up being on the outside looking in once again. So interesting to kind of see all of that play out and everything. So don't know how in the world they came up with that tire back in the spring, but whatever that was, clearly that was an anomaly. So I think this is now kind of the normal Bristol racing that we should expect here with this car and with this tire. So that's at least we didn't see anything too controversial that would have shook up this round of 12 for sure. Now kind of looks more like I think a little bit more of a normal round of 12, especially when you look at like who's below the cut line and who's above it. The top 8 definitely looks like the top 8 that we've basically seen the entire season, and top 12, the bottom 12 drivers. I think those are the guys that kind of made it along throughout the season and were able to get lucky at certain times, like Bowman, Chase Briscoe, and it's Daniel Suarez, and etc. So no disrespect to them, but just the way that the points have laid out. The top 8 right now look like the top 8 drivers of the year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this round of 12 goes, and how many of those 8 are able to stay within the top 8, and if any of those guys in the top 12 can or the bottom 12 can kind of make their way in.
And that's one thing that we're gonna find out. Kansas is definitely a track that, because of this car, is going to be more racy. Some of these teams have definitely struggled on the 1.5 mile package. You brought up Chase. You also brought up Chase Briscoe, because Clyde, I call him Clyde. If you don't, it's because of me not putting up the show, but the fact is, that's what his name is. Chase and Suarez are 2 guys that haven't been great on the cookie cutters here recently, so they're giving up some points, and that's where that's going to affect if they don't do something here on Sunday, their chances with, of course, Talladega and the Roval remaining in the round of 12. I mean, the round of 8 is more straightforward with 2 cookie cutters and Martinsville. But if you're able to win this race on Sunday, which I would think is a favorite for Larson, one of his best tracks. Tyler Reddick, it's a great track for 2311. It's a possibility for Bubba to take a non-playoff win there, go and upset the apple cart, so to speak, with the impending birth of his baby boy, Amanda, basically bursting at the seams, but still swinging a golf club really well, based on Instagram. But yeah, so there you got that. It'll be interesting to see what happens there at Kansas this coming weekend. The points heading into the round of 12 have Larson leading by 15 over Bell, 19 over Reddick. Byron is 25 back. So yeah, there's some decent gaps there in terms of their you got minus 32 for Hamlin, minus 28 for Blaney, 33, 35. Yeah, so Hamlin to Briscoe in 12th is only separated by 12 or 10 points. If you count Blaney into that, it's 14 points. So there's the top four kind of have a little bit of a cushion, but not a lot, especially Larson for now. But as we saw, what happened at Atlanta, one of those situations, and he could be really far out of, he could put himself in a position where he's going to need to do something at the Roval. Reddick did not have an amazing round, but it proves that when you go out and do the job in the regular season, it can cover you at least in one round. Can it cover you in 2 rounds? We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I mean, Gibbs, true. I mean, we didn't, before we move on with the Cup Series, with the Xfinity Series, I mean, outside of MTJ going out, Brad has not really run great for a while. He was really good at the start of the season, first half of the regular season, and then it kind of slowly dipped to the point where he fell out of the playoffs. We knew Harrison Burton wasn't going to make it. He was going to need a miracle, kind of like winning Atlanta, to go and make it further. And then Ty Gibbs, I mean, everyone talks about how great he is, and Daniel Suarez was running 30th. I mean, he was nowhere. He was absolute dog shit bad the whole entire weekend. And he's supposed to be this great, driver, and there's supposed to be some great team, but he's got the Chase Elliott problem going now, the William Clyde Elliott problem, where it's going to be 2 seasons if we keep going, and 2 seasons plus he's not won a race. And he got all the hype. He's got Monster Energy and a bunch of, Jesus freaks sponsoring him. And at some point, he took over for Kyle Busch, right? Kyle Busch is one of the greatest drivers of our era, of the last 25 years. At some point, you got to show up. You know what I mean? Him going down with a whimper, so to speak, is not a great look for him. And you bring in somebody who's motivated in Chase Briscoe, who is still in with a team that's closing. And you have Stuart Haas getting 2 cars in the top 10 with a team that's closing. You got to wonder how Gibbs will actually respond to this moving forward. Did you have any takeaways on those guys? Or
Well, I mean, I think at least for Brad K, I think I can agree that he'd been falling off for a while, and a little bit disappointing to kind of see his season kind of basically come to an end there, because I thought that he had been the best performing RFK car up to this point. So I thought that he might have a better playoff, but turns out not. And for RFK, thought maybe they would have been able to do something here, but especially because I think Brad has some good tracks coming up for him here in the round of 12, but they didn't make it out. And I mean, honestly, not surprised that Harrison Burton didn't make it, of course, because he didn't do anything outside of win at Daytona. But the rest of it, I mean, not surprising for Ty Gibbs as well. I mean, we talked about him earlier, but just not a lot or not enough for him to be able to get out of this round of 16. So, I mean, it is what it is, but now I guess, we move on and they're eliminated.
Yeah, now they get ready to kind of run out the string and get ready for next year. Happy birthday to Leonard Wood. Turned 90, one of the greatest minds in the history of the sport. Him and his brother, Glenn Wood, the Wood brothers are history in just personified. And, when Blaney was driving for them and they were running well a lot more, it was really cool to see them back, being able to see them contend. Once they took Blaney away to go and drive for Penske proper, it hasn't been the same. I'm hoping next year, whatever they do with the team or whatever, John Wood, who's basically running the team now, and I think he also seems to run their socials too, but I hope that they get the right set of people together for Josh Berry, because Barry has the talent and ability to be in this series. He's pissed off a bunch of people recently with some of his moves, but he belongs. He's a really good talent. He's a really good race car driver. They could utilize him and maximize him, especially at the short tracks. And he can make some things happen on cookie cutters as well. And he could get a cup win next year. I do think he probably won't the rest of this year, but I do think the 21 car can get win 101 next year with the right things in the right situation there. We'll move on to the Xfinity Series race and what might be the last race for highpoint.com or High Points Illusion, whatever in the Xfinity or for Stuart Haas or just in general. Cole Custer goes and wins the Food City 300 and in turn wins the regular season title. Sheldon Creed gets a second place for the 13th time in his Xfinity career. Chandler Smith finished third, Jesse Love fourth, Ryan Truex fifth, Buckshot Jones sixth, Josh's boy, Redneck Jesus, the NASCAR historian, basically Amy's foil, and comedy driver, the man himself, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Boomhauer, however many different ways you want to call him, Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished seventh, and at least what he said was going to be his last race, at least for in an Xfinity car for probably a year and change, but I have a hard time believing he won't be in a car next year, especially after his TV commitments are completed. But, it's Junebug. He gets to call his own deal. He wants to run that late model and hang out, and anything that involves him drinking more beer, which I think he was drinking Miller Lights, it seemed like. So he was covering it up because I think he was drinking Miller Lights. So he's turning over to the correct side of things after so many years of drinking piss. But anyways, Brian Sieg trying to make it into the playoffs, unfortunately wasn't able to. Sam Mayer AJ Allmendinger round out the top 10. Way more competitive race. This Xfinity race, you had Justin Allgaier 10 laps down in 30th, got wrecked in a wreck that started with Austin Green and also took out Green's teammate Parker Retzlaff. So the two cars from Jordan Anderson Racing were eliminated on the spot, and Allgaier's day just went from bad to worse. Spun out late in lap 200, and from then on, that was the last caution. Gave away the regular season title. We'll see if that actually matters here in a few weeks' time. But Cole Custer, obviously a lot of good momentum going for him going into next year, but he's setting himself up right now for a possible run at a repeat championship here in the Xfinity Series. They've been one of the best cars all year, but going out there and putting a solid run, leading the most laps and winning this race, he's telling people that, you know, he means business here, Josh.
Yeah, Cole Custer, I mean, well, he also had an up and down race as well, in addition to Dale Jr., because within the first couple of laps, he had a flat tire and had to pull over, and they threw the caution for him, and he was out in the back, and that was at the same time that Dale Jr. was having his radio issues and all that stuff, and Cole Custer made his way to the back of the field and got back into the top 20 and slowly was able to fight his way back up to the lead. And then from there, it was him battling with Justin Allgaier, battling with Sheldon Creed for the win there. And I think just showing that he was able to pass and make his way through the field showed how good of a car he had through that race. And yeah, I think Cole Custer definitely might be making a case for a second championship. It's almost kind of like last year, didn't really, I mean, he did do stuff during the regular season last year, but this year has kind of been a little bit different for him in terms of performance, but it's been right up there in points, just quietly sitting there, and took the regular season title at the last race from Allgaier, which I think we both would have thought that Allgaier would have made it and would have been the guy, but one wreck is all it took for Justin Allgaier there to win the race, or not to win the race, but to wreck in that race, and he was able to finish, I think. But for Allgaier, I mean, after kind of the season that he had, only missing out on by 3 points. I mean, he's still the top seed, but those 15 points are pretty valuable. So for Allgaier, it's got to be a little disappointing that he was able to get to this point and not win the regular title there. So yeah, it was pretty bad for Allgaier there. I mean, the racing was pretty good with him and Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed got into him going into the front stretch there, and he spun out. So that was a bit of a racing deal there. But yeah, disappointing for Allgaier with how that ended up. But yeah, Cole Custer raced pretty well, and he makes his way out as the regular season champion. So yeah, I think could be good for him going into this playoffs here with a little bit of momentum. But yeah, my guy Dale Jr. coming back in this race, and I mean, it was a wild one because he had the issues with the radio, the helmet. They replaced the helmet, which kind of reminded me back of 2004 when switched places with Martin Truex after he got burned in Sonoma, and they were able to keep it on the lead lap, and somehow they were able to keep him on the lead lap, changing helmets in the car in mid pit stop, which I don't think I've ever seen before, him doing that or anybody doing that. And then not only that, but You got to get the Hans device attached, before you go back up to speed. Otherwise, it'd be really bad. But he was able to get it attached. It seems like, and which that in itself is a hard thing to do because it's literally holding you upright and holding your neck in place, and you got to be able to kind of wiggle your way into the harness hooks and all that stuff. So that was a pretty frantic, pretty eventful throughout the night for Dale Jr. and it took forever for them to figure out how to get the radio working. So hopefully next time he races, whether that's in the late model or Xfinity, they figure out the radio stuff, because it seemed like he said that the radio had affected him throughout the year in the late model car, and I guess it was never quite right or something. And then apparently the radio that they had that they started out with was bad too, but they were able to fix it eventually. And then from there, he was able to go back and finish in the top 10. So that was good. And, finishing in the top 10, after all the issues that they had, but wasn't as impressive as last year, of course, because they were able to make passes on the bottom. Dale Jr. Was able to run top, but then couldn't pass on the bottom, so just didn't have quite the same amount of maneuverability and capability that they had last year in this event. So still a good result though in the top 10 after a disaster of first stage there for him. So at least he's able to get something going here, and possibly it might be his last race. But I mean, I'm kind of like you, I doubt it, but I also know that throughout the year, next year, the longer you are away from the car and you don't prioritize it, it could end up being like, well, I don't know if I want to do it again or something like that. So not sure what he's gonna do and everything, but I think he's gonna definitely do late model racing, and I think as long as he does late model racing, there's always gonna be a itch to go and run, one of the short tracks or one of the bigger intermediates like Homestead or Darlington, where it's more of a driver track type of deal. So, or North Wilkesboro, should it ever come on the schedule as a points race in Xfinity. So I know he really wants that to happen. So any of those opportunities, I think he's probably down for a once a year type deal. So we'll see what the future holds there for Dale Jr. and everything. But if that was it, then that was quite an eventful one. But we'll see what he's able to do in the future in late model racing. But otherwise, I mean, I think for me personally, this is the race that I paid attention more to than the other race. But at least in this one, there was definitely quite a lot that happened throughout the race.
Yeah, plenty of action, and I was having to hear it on the radio, follow it on socials, and hear it on the radio. CW's debut with NASCAR. This for the next however many years they'll have it. They're using the NBC crew for these races, so I do think there are some people, probably Rick Allen, amongst others, because it sounds like from what I heard, I think it was on NASCAR radio or it was one of these places where they said there's a lot of people that are uncomfortable. I think it is NASCAR radio where they said there's a lot of people that are in limbo TV for the TV side of things. I mean, hell, you had Vince Welsh visiting his son at the racetrack this past weekend. So hell, maybe even he's gonna go and come back from the dead. But there was that. We'll see the rest of the Xfinity Series on regular TV, which is good. There won't be practice and qualifying though. Won't get for this year, but that's whatever. The racing is what people show up for, and it's been the best product out of the three major NASCAR series. The points standings, heading into the race in Kansas. Allgaier is the leader in points by 6 over Custer, 9 over Hank Hill, 10 over Chandler Smith. Then from there, there's a little more of a gap. SVG 5th, minus 17. Jesse Love minus 21. Sam Mayer. So from Jesse Love all the way down to Kligerman in 12th is 15 points. If you add SVG into that, it's 19 points. So a lot of volatility that can happen amongst that group. But Allgaier, of course, 14 stage wins this year. Chandler Smith has 6, but his performances have been hit or miss at best. Austin Hill hasn't really done much of anything in a while. Custer has momentum, so we'll see how that all works out. Parker Kligerman in his last full-time season, at least to what he says, because Nick Sanchez will be taking over that ride. Can he go and get a win in Xfinity on his way out and give himself a chance to advance? Sammy Smith, who's basically done nothing all year, still beat Buckshot Jones, or for whatever that's worth. AJ Allmendinger struggled, but he's AJ. You put him in the playoffs, give him half a chance. You never know what's going to happen. You have the Roval at the end of the round, as you have a super speedway, and you have the Roval the next after Kansas. So opportunities for both of those. Creed, at some point he has to win, right? Herbst, and we don't know. He says he doesn't know what he's doing for next year. Mayer going to Haas with Sheldon Creed. So we don't know what JRM is doing either with most of their rides. Of course, Connor Zilic is going to be one of the full-time drivers. And Allgaier, we figure, of course, will be back. So that still leaves 3 rides open because the 1, the 8, and the 9 are all unaccounted for. Buckshot Jones going back to Gibbs. So we'll see what happens with that in the playoffs moving forward. Now, the Truck Series also raced Thursday night at Bristol, the UNOH 200, and they had the second race of round 1. Layne Riggs. It was basically 3 drivers. Connor Zilic, who started on pole, driving the Spire number 7. You had Corey Heim, who started second, and then Layne Riggs, who started 18th but came up and won. You led the last 80 laps of the race to go and get that done. Layne Riggs over Corey Heim, Rajah Caruth, Christian Eckes, and Nick Sanchez. So 4 playoff guys, 2nd through 5th. Matt Crafton, Chase Purdy, Ty Majeski, Stuart Friesen, Tyler Ankrum, your top 10. You had Taylor Gray in 12th, Enfinger in 17th. Zilic, which the Spire 7 is a playoff truck because of the owners, 19th. Rhodes, 27th. Daniel Dye, 32nd, and then the 45, which is also a part of the playoff based on the owner points, finished 35th. So that, Layne Riggs has been a real revelation. I think we were picking him earlier this year a lot, and then after a while we just were like, well, we're not doing enough, and but probably it isn't going to happen this year. But I guess in that break, kind of like how all of a sudden during that 2-week break, we had some Cup teams figure out something like RCR, think Stewart Haas, whatever. In the Truck Series sense, it was Front Row and Layne Riggs. But you saw the two main contenders, I think, outside for this championship right up there in Corey Heim and Christian Eckes. I mean, it's really those two guys. I mean, credit to the two drivers for Spire, the two full-time drivers for Spire in Raja and Nick, who, I mean, of course, Nick Sanchez, big weekend. They announced that he will be moving up. We don't know what Raja Cruz is going to be doing next year. But for both of them, big opportunities there, big races for both of those guys. Majeski gives himself that cushion. And I mean, right now, 3 drivers locked in on points: Eckes, Heim, and Sanchez. Majeski's plus 58, so essentially you'd need to implode to not make it. Raja Caruth at plus 35 isn't too bad, as long as he's able to get a decent race finish. Ankrum plus 25, Taylor Gray plus 23. The battle is defending series champion Ben Rhodes is minus 12 off the cut. Daniel Dye is minus 7 off the cut. $2,000 in finger. So, I mean, Layne Riggs is setting himself up for 2025, honestly, with this momentum. And the whole truck field should be glad he didn't make the playoffs, because he's become a problem. And that team is a championship level team and has been for the last few years. And Layne Riggs is starting to figure this thing out. And that should be a concern to everybody after his performance at Bristol on Thursday night.
Yeah, it should be a problem for Layne Riggs, because now he's won a handful of races here and starting to figure it out. And yeah, we did pick him a bunch as a wild card driver back earlier in the season. He had a lot of bad luck early in the season as well, and I think that's probably why we kind of stopped looking towards him. But he's come back now and has figured it out here, and has won once again and shown what he's made of. It seems like it's a short track, so it's definitely a track that he should expect himself to be good at. He was good at Milwaukee, which, while not a short track, certainly has the same type of approach as a short track. Ran well at North Wilkesboro earlier this year, so that's definitely in his wheelhouse there to have that type of performance, and that's exactly what he did here on last Thursday night in the truck race. So yeah, for him, next year I think it's definitely going to be very pivotal for him to make a run at the championship here. And for Layne Riggs, he's definitely in that 38 car or truck. That's definitely a truck that can perform at a championship level. We've seen what it can do in the past with both Todd Gilliland and Zane Smith in those cars or in those trucks. So definitely that's something he's got to look out for everybody in this series. So certainly for him, it's definitely a performance, because it's one thing to go win over in Milwaukee and it be a one-time deal, but for him to go out and win at Bristol shows he's probably here to stay for the next couple of years in the series and beyond. And at least this time he didn't hurt his shoulder celebrating, so that's good for him. But as far as everybody else, the playoff contenders, Heim also the only guy to really show up in this race and finished in second. Raja had a good race, which was interesting because Raja hasn't really performed all that well throughout this season since he won at Las Vegas, but come out here with a top 5 and on the good side when it comes to making it into the playoffs and being secure in that. And as long as he stays good at Kansas, which that's 1.5 miles, which I think that's his strong suit for him, he'll be able to qualify into the next round of the truck playoffs, the round of 8, and I think he'll have a decent shot there. And then everybody else, I mean, hard to say. I mean, Ben Rhodes, who's been up and down, of course, but Ben Rhodes on the outside looking in, Daniel Dye kind of expected that, but Champion being eliminated in the first round, I think, even though Ben Rhodes probably isn't the best driver in this series, for him, definitely kind of wild that the Champion from previous year is already out in this, or looking like he's going to be out in this first round. So kind of crazy to see, but it kind of shows how things change from year to year. But I think it also shows with the guys that qualified in on points like Heim, Sanchez, and Eckes. I think those are the guys that this year we're going to have to look out for here in this truck championship.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about those two, Heim and Eckes. Eckes, of course, moving up to Xfinity as well. We don't know what Corey Heim's plans are. I've said it that if Ford knew what was good for them, they'd be figuring out a way to put them in a car in Xfinity next year. I mean, they're bringing Harrison Burton back down for whatever that's worth, and then you have Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed. So it looks like they're trying to build some talent. You have Layne Riggs as well, and Ty Majeski, but you need to be building that roster because Ford's amount of teams that are Ford teams is growing, and so you need to have that talent. I mean, front row is definitely at the front end of that, based on the team they're going to be putting out there next year, most likely. I mean, you already have Gagson and you have Todd Gilliland, and they're both guys in their 20s. And likely scenario of that third charter going to another young gun, whether it's Zane Smith, whether it's what's it called, Herbst, whoever, it'll be probably another young gun. So see what happens with that. But the Truck Series, we'll see what Ben Rhodes and Daniel Dyer are able to do. You have Dye's in a McAnally Hilgeman truck. Of course, he's also moving up next year, so trying to see if he stays in it or if he's going to get eliminated. Really doesn't bother him that much because he's got a job for next year. Him and Eckes will be teammates next year at Colleague Racing, so we'll see how that all goes there. Formula One talk now, Singapore Grand Prix, and honestly, there really wasn't a whole lot. It was a master class. I said that about Larson. I mean, it was probably out. I mean, you could talk about Miami, you could talk about Russia before he binned it, but I think here, this whole entire weekend, Norris knew he was going to win, and when you win by almost 21 seconds, it's proof positive that he has the best car, and when he actually puts everything together, he's a real problem. He's basically the only thing standing between fish lips and a fourth world championship. Norris with the win over gets his third win of 2024 over fish lips, Oscar Piastri, and Woody Russell, Charles Leclerc, Sir Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz were the lead lap cars. Alonso, Hulkenberg, and Checo Perez round out the points finishers. Franco Colapinto just outside in 11th. And then whatever the rest of these. Kevin Magnussen fell out along with Alex Albon. Daniel Ricciardo finished last in what is likely his last F1 race. Got very emotional during the press sessions, but especially after the race. But he got a fastest lap on his way out. For good, better, or worse, I don't know. But yeah, Lando Norris went out there and should have gotten a Grand Slam. But he's somewhat in this championship, kind of making it a little bit interesting, Josh. I don't think he's going to get there, but still, at least there's some juice. And because there's 4 teams in the mix, kind of gives F1 a desperate kick in the pants that was lacking over the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's at least the constructor championship is exciting and interesting here, and I think that's kind of to your point there with it being open between Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari here. And the constructors championship, it might be between Red Bull and McLaren, but at least among those 4 teams, we've seen somebody win, and so it's gotten pretty competitive here as of late in F1. And Lando finally wins from the pole. He doesn't kind of fold like he's seemingly done in the past when winning from the pole, and actually went out and led every single lap of this race and ran well. And I think for him, it's definitely a victory that he needed, the type of way that he raced in this race, and being able to perform in the manner which he did, definitely that's what he needed. And it might not be enough for the championship, only improved 7 points on Max Verstappen. And if they were, let's say they were to finish 1-2 the rest of the year, and Max or Lando were to win out, there wouldn't be mathematically enough time here to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he'd only be able to make up 42 points on Max Verstappen here, and he's down by 52. So he'd still lose by 10 points if they were to finish 1-2 the rest of the way. And even with the fastest lap, that would only get you down to I think 3, or 4, a 4-point lead. So that'd still be even not enough for Lando there, and you'd need Max to start having major problems in a handful of those races to not be able to win, for Max to not be able to win the championship. So it's still not close yet, but I think just probably a couple more races here, and we'll probably have crowned Max Verstappen champion. It'll be mathematically impossible for Lando, but even that all happening is still with McLaren coming out here and winning races, performing better overall than Red Bull. I think that's definitely good for the constructors battle here, and for the competitiveness of the sport, and definitely makes it going to be more interesting next year as well. So there's not too much to say there, but of course, at least points wise, we can talk about Ricciardo getting the fastest lap there and stealing. I mean, even if it ends up being meaningless, it does steal away a point from Lando there, or from Max there. So at least there's that, and takes away from Red Bull, at least the strategy wise. But sucks for Ricciardo, because I think he's still a good guy, but obviously it's not working out for him here in Formula One. And he's already 35, and which is crazy, because I thought he was still kind of young, but now he's 35, and performing the way he is, yeah, they're gonna find somebody else like Liam Lawson and put him in there, and that'll be it for Dan Ricciardo. Maybe he comes to America, races in IndyCar. Maybe, I don't know. He says he doesn't want to. Maybe he makes a appearance for Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series or something like that, and fulfill a dream of racing in NASCAR, at least for one race. But yeah, unfortunate. And you saw the emotion of him on Sunday, and how he's realizing that was probably the end for him there in Formula One. But crazy to think, but I guess it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but he's getting Red Bulled yet. I mean, he wanted to, as my Viper poster fell off, and looks like my young Tom Kendall poster also is going to be falling off behind me. But for Ricciardo, the performance hasn't really been there for a while. He isn't the same guy that he was 10 years ago, when he broke out and won races. Basically, was the only car that wasn't a Mercedes that did anything that year. And he was one of the best drivers for a good period of time in this sport. But essentially, fish lips getting into Red Bull was the beginning of the end of his career, in a sense, because that nomadic manner, going from Red Bull to Renault to McLaren, and now back to Toro Rosso, didn't net him the desired result, which was going back to the main team. So unfortunate there. The points, I mean, Josh, you mentioned 52 points, the gap in the drivers, and it's not insurmountable, but he's gonna need help. Charles Leclerc's 8 points ahead of Oscar Piastri for third. Then you have Carlos Sainz, who is 16 points out of Lewis Hamilton. Russell's 19 points behind Lewis. Checo Perez is 8th. Alonso and Hulkenberg rounding out the top 10. Hulkenberg tied with Stroll, but in the top 10 because of a best finish. Yeah, and then in the constructors standings, McLaren has a 41-point lead on Red Bull. Ferrari is 34 points behind Red Bull, and Mercedes is 4th on their own, Aston 5th on their own. You have RB, then Haas separated by 3 points, and you have Williams 3 points ahead of Alpine, and bringing up the caboose is Kick, Save, Slobber. All right, Josh, I know you talked here first. I don't know if you want me to go and say my piece. I think, you know what, I'll just do this because I want the build up. A rare instance of Josh actually getting mad, which is kind of funny because it never really happens, but Josh is not happy, so I think this build up will help. It's part of the tease, you gotta go and leave the best part for last, and in this case, it's not going to be as much action for me. I am angry. I'm not happy about how the Niners played, but I'm used to it. Kyle Shanahan blowing games in the second half is something that has happened for his entire tenure as the 49ers head coach, and keeping guys who shouldn't even be on a practice squad out there in key roles is also a problem. If you asked me as a Niner faithful, what are the biggest problems with the Niners in terms of their roster construction It's the right side of the offensive line. It's the secondary, and it's a lack of a pass rush outside of Nicholas John Bosa. Well, all those things reared their head. You had god-awful special teams as well. Moody missing a kick, punt coverage being atrocious, giving that fucker away against the Rams, who are not that good. And they're putting out practice squad wide receivers, and they're getting beat by these practice squad wide receivers. There's a lot of regression, it seems like, early in the season with some of these players. You have Brandon Ayuk got the bag and has not looked great at all. Probably trying to get into shape, which isn't great when you're having to do that during the season. Trent Williams, same thing. Might be starting to decline. So there's concerns there. Then you have Javon Hargrave, who I think he tore tricep, bicep, and he's out for the year. The amount of money he's making, and to lose him is not ideal. Secondary played terrible. The bad coverage, bad pursuit. The tackling was abysmal. And I mean, I mentioned the special teams side, but the defense in the fourth quarter, I mean, your third and fourth quarter, you have a 2-touchdown lead. I mean, just force them in a check downs, force them to not be able to have the deep ball, because that's one of Stafford's biggest strengths. And instead, they kept on giving up the deep ball, and that in turn led to the final result. And Brock Purdy had a great game. Jawan Jennings had arguably the best game of his career. I think his Super Bowl performance was better. And in both cases, they're wasted because they lost. And falling to 1-2, no, it's not the end of the world. It's 3 weeks into the season, but there are patterns and there are things that have gone on that make me really concerned about their viability, and that's something that we really have to look at. Some of the players, Colton McKivitz, Ronnie Bell, Navondre Campbell, they need to either cut them or do something else with them, because none of them are playing very well. But they get a get-right game this weekend. They're tied with Arizona and the Rams at 1-2 division. The Rams are actually 1-1, lost to Arizona, beat the 49ers. So 49ers right now on the bottom of that's and Seattle has a 2-game lead already. If you look at some of the other teams, I mean, Minnesota also is 3-0. You have a bunch of 2-1 teams, 4, 5, 6 2-1 teams. So it'll be hard work. So we'll see how that comes off. I was previewing, there's something with I mean, I led up to this, Josh, and it's your time. I always say it's your time to shine with the sim segment. Well, it's your time to shine. Let us know how the Jaguars have made you feel after a third consecutive loss, and I think 8 games in a row that Trevor Lawrence has lost. I think I saw the stat, it was 7 games in a row he's lost, so it's 8 in a row now. Getting like absolutely run on national TV on Monday Night Football in Buffalo. It was almost like some of the players on that team were participating in the pregame festivities in the parking lot at Buffalo.
Yeah, well, I said it at the top of the show, but I think the word that I would use is despondent, which is feeling, let me pull this up, low spirits from loss of hope or courage. So that's how I feel mostly. And I mean, there's a lot of bad. I've seen a lot of bad over the years, but this probably is the worst because of the expectations and who is on the team and all that stuff. And that's considering all of that, I think this is probably the worst game I've ever seen. I've seen Derrick Henry run for 99 yards and score a touchdown, and then do it again a year later and own the Jaguars for a bit. I've seen that, but I was like, well, it's whatever. The season was lost anyway. It's all over. This is just like, the embarrassment. But this, it's the beginning of the year. There's still hope, or there still should be hope. And then, at least they didn't give us any hope by winning or anything like that. But, they had a lot of expectations. You have Trevor Lawrence, you have all these guys. You paid Josh Allen. It's the 30th season anniversary, and they come out flat. They basically like disappeared. Like they lost their talents, like in Space Jam. After Travis Etienne fumbled the ball. So, yeah, and 2 weeks ago in Miami and at third quarter there. So, yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough, and it's probably not going to get better. I'll say that there's a non-zero chance, that they could turn it around. I mean, because, hey, in theory, they could go turn around and win next week. They can win the following week and the week after to go back to 500. But, that's probably not happening, more than likely. But, even if it's a 0.01 chance, I think that's still a non-zero chance of that happening. So it's been pretty bad. And when you see the team play that poorly overall, it's not just the quarterback, it's not just the secondary, the linebackers, the defensive line. It's it's everything. It's coaching, and that's actually why, like, I think they need to get rid of everybody, but I think I want to see Doug Peterson fired first, because at least get somebody in there, or at least see who else on the team, the interim coach, whoever that would be, could see if they could get something out of the team, because it's clear that whatever he has to say, they're not buying it. Whatever message they've clearly lost it. So the play design on offense is poor overall. Whatever they're trying to do, it doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't have any theme to it. There's no continuity, no rhythm. It seems like they're just picking random plays out of a bag and saying, okay, let's do this play, and insisting on calling the play exactly how it should, or exactly how they think it should be called, and not adjusting to the situation, or trying to exploit tendencies on the other team's defense and everything. And this is a Doug Peterson led team, and he's had a lot of sloppiness in his career as a coach. You go back and watch Philly, and they had a lot of issues, and that's what led to his demise there, and it's probably going to lead to his demise here. So sucks, because it's like, how did we go from 27-0, and which that in itself, that first half was bad, but come back and win against the Chargers? How do we go from that to this? Like, I don't understand how in the span of 18 months they go to rock, literally sky high to rock bottom. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't really have yeah, I don't really know how much more I can say other than fire everybody. I mean, I almost want to say fire Trevor Lawrence, but I think that's like significantly harder, if not impossible, to do. But he's not the worst problem, but certainly a problem, and it'll continue to be that way as long as they have the people in charge that they have in charge. So I actually think Trent Baalke kind of constructed a decent team, but for whatever reason, Doug Peterson company, it doesn't matter who's calling plays, whether it's Press Taylor or Doug Peterson. It's his philosophies, it's his coaching style, whatever. It's clearly not working. And the defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen, who they hired this offseason, maybe he needs to shave his mustache or something because he doesn't deserve it. And has not done what he said he would do, and the things that he's trying to implement are clearly not working. They're rotating defensive linemen, they're rotating linebackers. The secondary's hurt. Foye Oluokun is hurt. Josh Haynes Allen gained 15 pounds or 20 pounds, and now he's slower for whatever reason. Why, I don't know who proved him to gain 15 pounds when coming off of a Pro Bowl season. But that was probably a mistake. And I think Devin Lloyd also gained some weight to get bigger, and I think it's clear on tape that he's also slow. So, I don't know why they decided to bulk up like that, but they did. It's not bodybuilding, it's football. So they're not linemen. Well, they are linemen, but they're not, defensive tackles or anything. So I don't know why that got approved, but yeah, it's bad. It's bad all around. And considering the talent level, it's underachieving at a major level. So that's it's whatever. And now they'll go to Houston and probably lose there and go 0-4, and then maybe they'll win against the Colts. But that winning streak against the Colts at home is probably going to come to an end. I mean, it probably has to, anyways, law averages and everything. But that'll be really bad because if they do, because that's supposed to be the throwback and honoring Tom Coughlin game where they're gonna break out the '90s jerseys. So they play in the '90s jerseys and stink it up. It's gonna be really bad, and maybe Shad will have to do a in-season firing for once, because I don't know how much more this can continue like that, because it's clearly not good.
Yeah, that's I feel you on that. I mean, it's crazy knowing that the team is underperforming and there's been a lot of bad decisions or bad guidance, or you're losing the locker room, which is always a sign of the wheels falling off. And I mean, if they go out and lay an egg against the division champions from last year, Houston's had a struggle to start this year too. It's a winnable game, granted the secondary being hurt and all, but will they put together a game plan that actually gives them a chance? That hasn't happened through 3 weeks, and like you said, it's hard to see that will actually happen on Sunday. And I mean, when you look at this league, you have Minnesota with Sam Darnold at 3-0. You have Green Bay with Malik Willis going out there, and they're up there. Green Bay, they're 2-1. Seattle's 3-0, which is interesting. I mean, there's a lot of teams right now, teams that were in the playoffs last year, like the Buccaneers, the Eagles, the Lions, and the Packers, all 2-1. I mean, the Niners, there has to be some real, like I said earlier, there has to be some real thoughts about some of the people on this roster, some of the decisions Kyle Shanahan makes. during game days, but then also the decisions they make in the off season when they don't address issues that have existed for years. So that's on Kyle and John. And in a year where most people were saying that they were a favorite or one of the favorites, it's entirely possible. I mean, the way the Niners have been for the last few years, they've also had shitty starts and had periods where they were nowhere and then switched it on. But you can't lose games like that, especially not to the Rams. It's the fucking Rams. They're terrible. They don't even have a NFL wide receiver. You let Kyron Williams run all over you like he was Walter Payton. Their defense was just hounding Brock, but he was somehow or another able to find Juwan Jennings like 8,000 times. But when he wasn't throwing to Juwan Jennings, it was a problem. So, and the defense, like I mentioned, like what you mentioned, Josh, the secondary was trash. The linebacking outside of Fred Warner was trash. The interior line couldn't get a pass rush. Couldn't hit Matthew Stafford enough. That's always a great way to destabilize him and that offense. You go and hit him enough, you won't be able to make the best passes, though. And special teams, Moody missing kicks. We already knew that from last year, but the coverage teams are terrible. Kick returns, punt returns. Mitch Wishnowski's punt was not good late in that game. So let's see what happens. New England's showing up to Levi's, and we'll see what they bring to the table there. Fantasy-wise, I won in 3 out of 4 of my leagues. The one I didn't win in was my league because Luke utilizing Brock Purdy, or I think it's Brock. I might be mixing up my teams because I know that I have Brock Purdy on one of my teams that I won with this past weekend. Do that. Go and on my one team that I should have won with last year, won this week to get in the third. Just to go back, Brock had a huge game, Jonathan Taylor had a huge game, and Derrick Henry. They all carried the team basically. The only people at double digits that I had on the bench, Kirk Cousins was like whatever, and then Quentin Johnson also. Cam Akers, a steady job for him filling in for Joe Mixon. And then defense, the Buffalo defense showed out, and then Butker. Go to so go that. Go and move that. Delete that stuff, and then I'm gonna go and switch that. So I'm gonna go over to my other account. Josh, how are your teams looking?
In fantasy, our teams in our league, 2-1, third place, did pretty good. So happy there. CJ Stroud didn't perform as well this week, but still in a loss there, but still performed solidly enough. Marvin Harrison performed good enough. I started Ayuk this week because I knew with receivers hurt that he might get some more targets there. Still not as performing as maybe what he should have. Probably should have started Amari Cooper, but I wasn't sure about him either. So DJ Moore. Yeah, DJ Moore I wasn't sure about either, but he got more targets and more production than Ayuk, so we'll have to reevaluate there. Jonathan Taylor had a big game. Derrick Henry had a big game. Brian Robinson had a huge game also on Monday night. Geno Smith had a decent game in the route over Miami. Xavier McKinney, Aiden Hutchinson also had a good game. Then Foy Lucan got hurt, so yeah, good game there. 200 points, pretty solid effort. Third place in our league, so in the right direction there. And then my other league here for work won that one, so 2-1 there, up to fourth place now. In there had Kyler Murray and Bijan Robinson, Marvin Harrison also. Malik Neighbors had a good game, with 2 touchdowns. Mari Cooper started in this league actually, 2 touchdowns there. Started the Colts defense, which that was a good move there also. Dicker the kicker, Cameron, only 4 points, but the Chargers lost to Pittsburgh there. So, wonder if I can pick up the Texans defense this week on my other league here, and then maybe we'll keep trading them in and out on a week-to-week basis there. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, definitely good direction here in fantasy. Third highest score in that league, and in fourth place here. So getting off on the right start here in both my fantasy leagues. So guess we'll see how it goes this week. Gotta put one of my guys on the bench here, and then I think we're good for this next matchup. So already off to a good start here in fantasy for me.
Yeah, I mean, like I changed over here to my other account, and yeah, I got worked by Luke. He had the high points for the week, I think. Yeah, high points for the week by like 3 or 4 over Steve. Josh being up there right now, third in the league, first team with a loss, but he's got second highest point total, like you said. Matt, Jeff, all up in 2-1. A bunch of 1 and 2 teams, including mine. I'm in the mix points wise. I'm not the highest, but not the worst. One had third highest point total week 2 behind Josh and Steve, and then had 2 performances which have not been outstanding. So 1 and 2 early days there. Team faithful to the Bay that I won with last year. I'm fourth in that league. Right now at 2-1. There's 7 teams at 2-1, and 5 that are at 1 and 2, and 1 that's 0 and 3. Yeah. So, and then in terms of my points, fourth out of the 7 that have won 2 games out of 3 so far. Had second highest point total there, and then also one of the higher point totals in the dynasty that Vic and I share. So we'll work with that. We can make something happen. So early days, make the right moves, put ourselves in a position to compete in December for these championships. We will move on to the roundup here. Start with the NHRA last week at the Carolina Nationals at Charlotte. Antron Brown gets the win in top fuel. Austin Prock In Funny Car, Dallas Glenn in Pro Stock, and Matt Smith in Pro Stock Motorcycles. In Top Fuel, Antron Brown beat Doug Foley in the final. In Funny Car, Austin Prock beat Matt Hagan. And Pro Stock, Dallas Glenn over Aaron Stanfield. And Pro Stock Motorcycle, Matt Smith over Richard Gadsden, who redlit there. So that was a second consecutive final for Gadsden, so credit to him on that, but not holding up there. Not able to get those other series, so okay, lovely. The points right now, Antron Brown 53 points up over Justin Ashley, 62 on Langdon, 67 on Coletta, and that's basically who's in the mix. They're the only ones within 5 rounds. Tony Stewart is a point behind Tony Schumacher and 4 points out of Brittany Force. That's a battle for 7th, 8th, and 9th at the moment. Funny Car, Austin Prock is 129 points out of Bob Tasca and 153 points over, or 136 over John Force / Jack Beckman. 153 for Matt Hagan. Then in Pro Stock, Dallas Glenn has an 8-point lead on Aaron Stanfield, 53 on Ender, 74 on Anderson. So that's relatively competitive there for drivers. Matt Smith has a 25-point lead on Gage Herrera and 27 on Richard Gadsden. So those are right now the ones that are in contention in NHRA. MotoGP, Moto2 raced last weekend at Emilia Romagna Grand Prix the previous week. Yeah, so the results from that race saw Nea Bassanini beat Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez on the podium. Then Marco Bezzecchi, Franco Morbidelli giving Ducati the first 5. Maverick Vinales 6th. Fabio Quartararo actually somewhat in the mix in 7th. Alicia Spargaro, Alex Marquez, Miguel Oliveira round out the top 10. Both Trackhouse bikes score points. And standings. There's issues. Jorge Martin got moved over by Bastianini, but in turn Bagnaia had issues. So he is 24 points ahead of Pecco Bagnaia going into Indonesia this week. Bagnaia over his teammate Enea Bastianini is 35 points ahead. Then Marquez is a point behind Bastianini. Brad Binder, Pedro Acosta separated by 8 points for 5th. Acosta fell out of the race. Vinales, Alicia Spargaro, Alex Marquez, and Fabio Di Gianantonio rounding out the top 10. Just go and do that. Yeah. Going to results and standings for so that's MotoGP. So in Moto2, Celestino Vietti won by a very close margin over Aaron Canet. Tony Arbolino 3rd, Iagura 4th, Felipe Alligator 5th, Joe Roberts 6th. His teammate Manny Ramirez was 8th, so good for them. Aegis was 7th. Alonso Lopez and Felipe Salic around at the top 10. Go through all those. Yeah, so there's nobody else of that stands out. The standings after that race in Moto 2, Ayagura 22 points out of Sergio Garcia. Joe Roberts is 45 points back in third. Alonso Lopez 3 points behind Roberts, and 10 points is Aldeguer versus Roberts. Then Alonso Lopez and Alonso Lopez, Felipe Aldeguer, the teammates there. The teammates, first and second, teammates, fourth and fifth. Interesting how that all works out. The World Superbikes will be at Aragon this week, but they were at results. They were in Italy. Nicolo Balega, even with the Toprak Raskatlioglu missing, wasn't able to make a whole lot of ground. He finished second in race 1 and third in the race 2 to make it now a 13-point lead in the standings. Alvaro Bautista on his own in third. Alex Lowe's 28 points behind in fourth, but 3 points out of Petrucci. And then you had Locatelli and some of those other riders there. Garrett Gerloff in 10th right now, 22 points behind Remy Gardner. In the Italian round, Petrucci wins race 1 in the Superpole race. Or he got the clean sweep. My bad. He swept all 3 races. Balega and Bautista are second and third. Bautista and Balega second and third in race 2. Superpole in between that. Alex Lowe's and Andrea Iannone were the podium. The World Super, so I did those. So IMSA last week was at Indianapolis, and the BMW ALL team went out and got the victory. So on the battle on the bricks, and so we go and get BMW 1-2 TDS. So Philip Bang and Jesse Krohn get the victory by 1.647 seconds over their teammate Yellowly and D. Filippi. Matthew Jaminet and Nick Tandy round out the podium for the GTP category. GTP cars were the top 8, including pole sitters, Sebastian Bourdais and Renger van de Zandam. In LMP2, Inter-Europole by PR1 Matheson. Sorry, I jumped that. It was Hunter McElrea, Mikkel Jensen, Seth Thomas for TDS racing over the Inter-Europole. And then the Era Motorsport stuff for Connor Zilic, Ryan Dial, Dwight Merriman rounding out the podium there. In GTD Pro, Michael Christensen, Lauren Heinrich, and the AO Dinosaur racing Porsche Dinosaur won over the Ford Mustang of Mike Rockenfeller, Harry Tinknell, and then the Corvette of Alexander Sims and Antonio Garcia. In GTD, Jan Halen, Elliott Skier, and Adelson for Wright Motorsports over Walker, Patrick Gallagher, Robbie Foley, and then Mike Skeen, Kenton Koch, and Mikhail Grenier for Korthoff Preston Motorsports. Of course, one race to go, 2 weeks away, Petit Le Mans for that. So we'll see how that all works out. Yeah, IMSA at Indy did that. So Supercars, Sandown 500. In the Bathurst 1000. Oh yeah, that's 2 weeks away as well. So track results, and so that's the results. Go and look at Sandown 500 was Will Brown over his teammate Brock Feeney. Then you had James Golding in third, Matthew Payne and Garth Tander was fourth, Craig Lowndes and Cooper Murray was on a Sunday stroll. So Cam Waters and Chaz Mostert, David Reynolds, Bryce Fullwood, and Cameron Hill. That'll be the top 10 of the standings. Moving on to the Bathurst 1000, Will Brown has a near 200 point lead. So that's something there. Brown over Chaz Mostert, then Brock Feeney, Waters, Payne, Golding, Percat, Randall, Will Davis, and Anthony Bisquale. Rounding out the top 10. And the driver points, you got F1 Academy at Singapore and this past weekend. You had, this is round 5, and then they'll have back-to-back weeks in Qatar and Abu Dhabi for the drivers, the standings, calendar, and results. Academy calendar. Yeah, so right now, this past weekend, Abby Pulling got the double. And so that good for her on that. In race 1, Pulling over Wooge and Dorian Pan. Leah Block finished 4th. But some of these, Marty, and then trying to go and figure out what the line of sight. Also, Pulling, Wooge, Pan, Block, Chambers, top 5, so 2 Americans there. Al-Kabasi, Amna Al-Kabasi, Nerea Marti, Schreiner, Lloyd, and Hausman round out the top 10. Race 2 result will show Pulling over Wooge and Penn again. Leah Block, Nerea Marti, Hamna Al-Kabasi, Lloyd. And so, Chambers, Schreiner, DeVries, or DeHus, rounding out the top 10. I wanted to see the standings. Abby Pulling is nearly, she's got a huge points lead. 95 points over Dorian Pan, who has 30-point gap or lead on Wooge. Chloe Chambers is 4th, Nerea Marti 5th. Leah Block moves up to 8th with her great performance this past weekend. But huge gap between her and Bianca Bustamante, usually during practice and film segments. So see what happens there. Rally Chili for WRC. Last but not least, you got Dominguez, but okay. The calendar, Yeah, there's there's Zephyr. So calendar, so we got Kenya or Chile. Then after that, you have whatever Central European Rally. I'm trying to get the information. Can't find it. I'll go to the points. Thierry Neuville is 34 points out of Tanak. Ogier 4 points to Ott, and Alfred Evans and Adrian Formeau round out the top 5. Callie Rovanperä running a limited schedule, coming off a retirement in this last race, so he's 6th. But Neuville's championship to lose as of now. NASCAR tripleheader at Kansas Speedway this coming weekend, Josh. I'm trying to think. Go and look back. I went first last weekend, so you get first dibs on the trucks.
Let me pull that up real quick. Well, I think for me, it's hard to go against Corey Heim in this playoff elimination race. So I'm gonna pick him. Not like he needs to win, but I think he will win. So I'm gonna pick him in this race. And then who else? Who else is a wild card that's like not in the playoffs here? And isn't Layne Riggs, since I think we know he can do it. I'm gonna throw this one out there, but how about Connor Daly making his start here in the Truck Series on a big oval like Kansas?
That would be wild if Connor can actually go and put a truck up front. He showed himself very well in the Junko Solinger IndyCar this past season. So for me, I'll go with Christian Eckes as my choice. Christian Eckes to win. And I don't know. In terms of a wild card, I am going to go with Jennifer Cobb is in the race. Marco, you have Brent, you have Corey Day, and so that's I'm gonna go with Corey Day. Hendrick, another HendrickCars.com truck. In terms of the Truck Series playoff, points wise, so you showed all that. Let us move forward to Xfinity. For me, to start the playoffs, I am going to definitely bring this, maybe the entry list has 39 for 38. I'm gonna pick, is that for real? Carson Ware's driving for Joey Gase? Well, I'm gonna go with Cole Custer because of the momentum to win. And my wild card will be gonna make, yeah, I'm gonna say if there's man, it's hard. You know what? I'll go with Brad Perez. Why not? Fan of his. I've got one of his merch shirts there, so rooting for Brad Perez. Brad Perez wildcard. What say you, Josh?
For me in this, as a pick, I think I'm gonna go with who was I gonna pick? I forgot who I was gonna pick. You took who I was gonna pick probably, but that's okay. Shoot. I'm gonna go with Justin Allgaier to win, get some momentum back here on 1.5 miles. And I'll put that one in for me, and then I'm gonna go with I want to go with Brandon Jones as my wild card. He's won here before at Kansas in 2020. Justin to win, and Brandon Jones wild card. Right. So yeah, Xfinity first race of the playoffs. Connor Zilish also in this one, so that's going to be good for him coming after 2 weeks ago, winning at Watkins Glen. Ran pretty well, top 3 at Indianapolis at the 6 hours. So we'll see if he can learn more here. First playoff appearance in Xfinity as well for Shane Van Gisbergen. So curious to see how he'll perform as well. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting opening round race here in the playoffs for Xfinity. But yeah, like I said, Justin Allgaier to win. Brandon Jones has won here before, back in 2020 here as a wild card.
Yeah, Buckshot Jones trying to go and get some momentum as he goes back to Gibbs would be something if he can go and get that victory. It is a decent track for him if there is a such thing, I guess. But Allgaier, definitely a solid pick. We're going to have to watch out for those two guys, but I wonder about the Toyotas. And speaking of the Toyotas, that leads us into the Cup Series race for Kansas. And you get the first dibs, Josh, in terms of the picks at Kansas.
I'm going to pick Tyler Reddick. He won this race exactly a year ago, so I'm going to pick him to win this race. I think Toyota still owns this track. They got a brief interruption with Kyle Larson winning in the closest finish ever, but yeah, this is still a 2311 JGR track for me. So I'll pick Tyler here to win because he needs it for him to make it on to the next round. And who's another good pick here that's out here? I'm going to go with, why not? I'm going to go with Carson Hocevar. This might be a good pick. He's had some decent runs here over the course of the season, and this might be one of those tracks where it's 1.5 miles for Spire, but they've really improved overall as a team, I think, and, the past couple of months, and they put together some solid runs.
Yeah, that's the Spire pick, and Carson Hocevar has got plenty of experience at Kansas. That team has got a lot of good momentum going for them. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. This week Of course, you have the drivers swap between Spire and Rick Ware. You have Jim Johnson driving in a third legacy car. You have J.J. Haley showing up with the NY team. And what is it? Kaz Grall in 15, Ty Dillon in 16. Everything else is same. And then you have Justin Haley, I mentioned, in the 7. You picked Tyler Reddick. I'm going to pick his co-car owner, Dennis Hamlin. Not because of his current performances, because it's been kind of rough recently for Dennis Hamlin. But he is really good at Kansas, so, and as we mentioned, it's a Toyota track, basically. And you picked a Spire car. I was going to go Justin Haley, personally, but actually, you know what? I'll change it up. I'll go with another team that has some positive momentum, and I will pick a Stewart Haas car, and I'll pick the 4 car of Josh Berry to go and have a decent run on Sunday. Last few races with him and Rodney Childers, who will be the crew chief of Justin Haley next year. So we'll see how that all goes and talk about it on the next episode, number 239 of the GSP. Yeah, I mean, the trucks, I think there won't be a change. We forgot who was going to get eliminated. We say I say Dye and Rhodes at home.
No change.
Yeah, no change. So we'll see what happens with that. Josh, yet another opportunity for you to talk. This time, way more positive. It's the sim segment, so let us know what we're seeing on iRacing and elsewhere.
Yeah, for me, this week, past week, ran a lot of Indianapolis road course with the road course or the Falcon GT4 Challenge Open and Fixed Series. Had some up and down runs, but I mean, I like Indianapolis as a road course. I like how it drives and everything. I don't think it's a very like entertaining track in terms of passing, but I, for some reason, have able to adapt to kind of the rhythm and flow throughout that lap. There's a lot of hard braking sections, but there's also a lot of technical sections as well on that track. So perform interestingly, but it's dependent on the rest of the field. There's definitely some points where people got clobbered on the start throughout the race, and some people just making total mistakes, but there's a fun couple of races racing on the road course challenge there. There was one guy that ran out of gas and couldn't make it back to the start finish line, and then they had to have, I think, the winner or somebody else like come back around in the LMP3 class and push the GT4 class across the line. So one of the more unfortunate things in seeing in iRacing, I think he was top 3 too, and seemed slow to a crawl coming out of the last turn and pass him, and he's just like, help, I need it. I need to pass the finish line. I'm out of gas. So that's unfortunate sometimes, but you guess you go the gamble there, light on fuel load. The setup, you can, the default setup doesn't run you out of gas, but if you're trying to shave off some lap time, and you try to go for less fuel, might run into that situation where you run out of fuel, and that's happened a few times in that series. So but that's part of endurance racing, I guess, and everything. And I guess this week, this is about what I did there. But this week on iRacing, I think let's see where I mean Kansas for the Cup Series and the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series there. So all the NASCAR series following the real life schedule. The Open Wheel Junior Open Wheel Oval Challenge is a new challenge with the Indy Pro 2000s running at Charlotte on the oval there. It's all oval series. So I guess kind of like a all oval version of the Indy Next, sort of. Right there. Eligible own content. The fixed IndyCar series at New Hampshire. So IndyCar is there at New Hampshire. Gen 4 at Indianapolis. So that might be something. Got other stuff here. NASCAR Legends at Rockingham. Sports cars. Mustang Skip Barber Challenge at Road America. Production Car Challenge as well there. See, there's a lot of other stuff. Not too much there. Formula Car. Formula 1600 at Winton Motor Raceway. And then the other Formula 16 fixed challenge at Lime Rock Park. So, trying to see if there's other stuff that I can hop in and race in. No, not really, but that's all right. Let's see. Let's see what else we have. News-wise, the iRacing College Series, I guess, kicking off soon, which they have I didn't know they had that, but they have the people who are in college, they have a esports thing. The Knoxville Nationals on iRacing coming up, just because we already had the real life Knoxville Nationals in real life. Now they're doing the dirt version, so that might be interesting to watch there. World of Outlaws out now. Dale Jr. last week giving some codes, and I think some more iRacing staff giving codes away, Xbox and PlayStation there. So that might be interesting to play that on console this week in iRacing. This was this week. See if I can find for happening this week, September 24th, 30 in iRacing. Knoxville Nats, as I said. iRacing series on Kansas. They're doing some Formula 4 racing as well. Challenge. I guess a global championship racing on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. Global MX5. There's going to be another challenge at the Prodigy Racing League, which that's a sim racing tryout for a shot in a real race car drafted into a pro racing career, so that might be interesting. Gonna have to maybe look into that, but I'll have to see what the track type is there. That's definitely a tough one to do, but that could be fun and everything. So I think that's it. Of course, this week on iRacing, always a lot of fun to do that, and maybe do that more on Sundays instead of watching Jacksonville. So, gotta watch the race, actually. That's true. But late start times might be able to fit a race or two in there. We'll see. But yeah, that's all for me, of course. As always, streams on Twitch TV, USailor2, Twitter, which, having to decompress, cope, whatever you want to call it, with the Jaguars, on Twitter at JP Huffine. They're not giving us our best in Jacksonville. They have concepts of a plan. They've got, they're killing the cats up in Buffalo, so gotta, there's always a Trump quote for, anything. And I guess it fits, and those are 3 different ones, and I guess they all fit here in this situation. So, it's good material. So, yeah, of course. And our YouTube page, where you can see all this, at Gripster Podcast there, which everything is uploaded to this point. So, yeah, that's good stuff here. Glad to talk about it, and we'll see y'all next week.
You always can rely on RNJ to go and rant and rave and express yourself in ways that make sense for, for whoever you want to be in that particular moment. So, definitely when you're not, when you're raging, the only thing that was missing in this was the visual version of all caps. That would be another way, and injecting bleach and drinking bleach and injecting crap into your veins. There's just so much of that guy. You can find me at PG Matthew 28 on Twitter. You can find me at I changed it to PGM GSP 28 on Instagram, and I'll post more of the bowling and stuff, like going to Apex One, which they have a bunch of good stuff over there. Apex One in Westfield with their sim racing. Hope to go there this weekend since we're getting paid. I'll try to get in on some of the hot lap challenges and the like. Hopefully gonna have a guest on here next few weeks. Big time guest, somebody who's been around on this show before. Try to get him on again. And you can find us at GripStripPod on Twitter. You can find philipgmatthew.com. And yes, we will be back with the next episode 239 of the GripStrip Podcast, to cover everything that went on in Kansas, NFL Week 4, and everything else going on in the world of racing and sports we'll talk about here on the GripStrip Podcast. So for Josh, Phil, take care, and we'll see you next time.